Greetings! Welcome into the Sports Shuffle. It is November 16th, 2023. The start of week number 11. I am flying Ryan Gilchrist along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin here as we're right before the Gobble week.
Yeah, just a week until Thanksgiving. We will have all of the Thanksgivings, all 16 games next week. No bye weeks before these 6 teams on bye for week 13 for some reason.
Are you flapping your arms up to Buffalo?
Yeah, that'll be tomorrow. Actually, I'll probably get. I'm gonna say something now. I will be getting a reminder in about 35 minutes to check in for my flight. So when an alarm goes off, that is just so I check in and I'm not stuck in the bathroom, literally on the flight the entire time because that's the only seat available. I apologize in advance. But we are here to talk about the rest of week number 11. We will talk about the game.
Hopefully they won't go, sir, we're overbooked for the holidays. You need to sit out on the wing.
No. Hopefully not. We'll talk about the game in Buffalo that I'll be attending and the other 13 games on the docket this week here in a few minutes.
And holy crap, all of the primetime games are actually good. I have no idea how that happened.
Hey, the blind squirrel finds the nut every now and again. Some news from today. Keenan Allen limited participant in practice. That's a good sign for him going forward. Justin Jefferson limited again. He wants to be on the field, but no guarantee quite yet if he will make it. Alexander Madison upgraded from did not practice yesterday to limited. He has a concussion, so optimism there. Achane for the Dolphins. I saw reports that he is going to play, but he is still considered limited. So, but barring a setback, he is expected to play. Pat Freiermuth, a full participant at practice today as well. The Dolphins have waived Robbie Chosen Anderson, or Robbie Anderson, depending on which name you recognize him under at this point. Not a big surprise. He hasn't done much. Of course, we have a game tonight. No major injury news from that game as of now. We might get some breaking news towards the end, should there be any issues with players tonight. Justin Fields, full practice for the second day. That looks good for him to come back and start on Sunday. Already mentioned the Deshaun Watson shoulder injury yesterday, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson being the starter. Braxton Berrios for the Dolphins running well at the Dolphins practice day, so that's good news as well. All in all, not too crazy for news today.
Yeah, I was listening to the radio, and there was an interesting story that apparently there was some video that was online that had Joe Burrow in the background with some kind of wrap on his hand, and then the video was removed.
Well, you got to remember, last time we saw him play, there was an injury to that right hand where he was bleeding profusely. So probably more of a precaution to keep it protected before the game than anything. But yeah, not a good look to put him out there like that. So we're going to talk about all of Week 11, including the Thursday night game here. And yeah, like I said, we'll talk about the trip up to Buffalo. More on that when I return. The return of Devin Achane. Obviously, I'm excited as a Dolphins fan, even though I'm playing him in a league I cannot afford to lose. But let's start with the Thursday night one. All the primetime games are good this week, and it starts with Thursday night. Cincinnati at Baltimore. Baltimore 7-3, Cincinnati 5-4. You're going to play Chase. You're going to play Mixon. You're going to play Burrow. You're going to play Lamar. You're going to play Mark Andrews. I'm actually playing a lot of Keaton Mitchell tonight because of a couple bye weeks. I have a lot of Alvin Kamara. So he's just a good potential high ceiling type of player. He's got a little bit of the early season Devon Achane capability where he can just burst off a couple plays and only get 8 carries and be great. Interesting play there, I believe. Big game for both teams. Baltimore, after the losses to Cleveland, had their lead over Pittsburgh, and Cleveland dropped to 1. They are still 2 ahead of Cincinnati. So Cincinnati really needs to rein the Ravens in just a little bit. Tough task. Baltimore losing 2 in a row at home in a short week. Not something they normally do, but who gets the win?
As you're definitely looking at this game, you seem to be Two very good, equal teams, but I'm definitely leaning toward the Ravens. Here's my reasoning. One, since he is missing one of its key weapons with Higgins being out, Houston was one dimensional but still beat Cincy in the air. Chase and Boyd are good. Chase, Boyd, and Higgins are much more optimal. Number two, Baltimore has become a ground and pound offense, much to the chagrin of Jackson managers everywhere, with the Gus Bus and Mitchell ground assault three. Since he has Mixon, who is projecting as an RB2, but Baltimore's ground game is better than Cincy's ground game, and I think that gives Baltimore the slight edge here. I'm picking the Ravens.
I'm on Cincinnati. I personally am not a big fan of T. Higgins, so I don't think him being out of the lineup is that massive. Tyler Boyd can step up and be good. And they've had a lot of help from the tight ends in recent weeks and some depth receivers that you probably have never even heard of before they make catches. So I don't see that as being a big weakness. A divisional game, short week, that throws a lot of the analytics and how things go out of the equation, because divisional teams, they know each other very well. They know the tendencies. We saw it last week with Cleveland and Baltimore. Pittsburgh beat Baltimore. Divisional matchups are not working in Baltimore's favor a lot of the time this year. In Cincinnati, even though they didn't get the win last week against Houston, they really played poorly for about 2.5 to 3 quarters of that game, and we're still in contention. I think they feel the urgency of not falling 2.5 games behind the Ravens, given the bye weeks that are still to come for the Ravens. And I think they get the job done on Thursday night in a very close, very entertaining game. Obviously, I think, Joel, you'll agree, it can go either way. We're on different sides on this one, but very good game, something we're very happy to see on a Thursday night for once.
For usually, a change.
Yeah, usually get the first game of the season on the opener with the Super Bowl champs. That's usually a good game. And then the first week of Thursday Night Football, usually they put a marquee match. But then after that, you got to get lucky. This one is one we should have seen coming a mile away as being one of the good games. And it is.
And
next up is not one.
Just 2 notes real quickly. The Odell Beckham, can you trust him at all tonight?
I'm not playing anybody other than Andrews in the passing game for the Ravens.
Yeah, so and also Mr. Boyd is the fill-in.
If you have T. Higgins or you have maybe a Chris Olave on bye this week, because remember, there are 4 teams on bye, there are worse options than Tyler Boyd. He had a bad drop in the end zone last week, but still had a pretty good game. I think Cincinnati's going to have to score a bunch of points to keep up with Baltimore. I think they do that, obviously. So I think Tyler Boyd has to be involved. I think Mixon and Chase are going to be the 1 and 1A options, but Tyler Boyd as a number 2 or number 3, not a bad play in this one, especially since Chase is going to get all the attention. He could get a lot of, short underneath routes and just compile a very good game. Next up is not a good game.
To the game that's probably going to be bleh.
Yeah, Dallas at Carolina. I'm sure Dallas is favored by about 57 points in this one. And I think most of us take him to cover. Here's the long and the short. For Carolina, you're playing Adam Thielen. That's it. And even then, not the best matchup for him. For Dallas, you're going to play CeeDee Lamb. You're going to play Dak Prescott. You're going to play Jake Ferguson. If you're in a pinch this week, Michael Gallup or Brandon Cooks could be viable. Tony Pollard has been very disappointing, but this is a good matchup. I think you got to keep in your lineup unless you have better options. And you might know by this time of the year if you have better options. Carolina has 1 win. Not much to play for at this point, as they don't even have control of their first round pick. There goes Chicago. Dallas still in the playoff hunt, still in the hunt for the NFC East. So a big game for them. Is there a cataclysmic collapse from Dallas coming?
I just can't see that happening. It's hard to pick Carolina if they can't get by a sloppy Bears team led by Tyson Bagent. I mean, it's I'm picking Cowboys by a mile here, as even in a great matchup last week against the Bears, 29th in points per game, Young was still only able to finish as a QB 22. Chuba Hubbard's snaps have gone from 65 to 47%. And on the other side of the ball, I know you got to start him if you have him, but how about these finishes for Tony Pollard, who was removed from Yahoo's can't cut list today. He has RB 41, 25, and 36 over the last 3 games.
And that's been on par with his season. He's too good. This is too good of a matchup. I'm with you on picking Dallas. I think this is pretty much a carbon copy of what we saw last week against the Giants. The only difference is Dallas is on the road and the opponent has a different shade of blue. That's really it. I think this is going to be a dominant performance by Dallas once again. Next up, a game with an over-under total of 33.
That's actually so that it's gone down. It's gone down because there was a post from Evan Abrams on Twitter. Evan H.A. Abrams, lowest NFL over-unders in the last 10 years. 32.5 Saints Browns 2022 and 34 Steelers Browns this week.
Yeah, I heard 33. I think depends on what site or what casino you're getting the line from. 33, 34. That is a turd of a game. Cleveland's still favored by a point, so this is essentially a pick 'em. Of course, no Deshaun Watson. It'll be Dorian Thompson-Robinson. What that does to your Cleveland options, who really knows? The first time we saw him, he was kind of a surprise start. Maybe he'll be better with a week of practice, but Amari Cooper is in doubt. Jerome Ford is in doubt. David Njoku is in doubt. You're not playing Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Don't even think about it. For Pittsburgh, tough matchup. Even guys like Najee, Jalen Warren, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and possibly Pratt Freiermuth if he returns, not going to have the best opportunity. Again, this is an over-under of 33, 34 points. Implied point totals for each team are right around 17. There's not a lot to go around. Remember Carolina, Chicago, that was 16-12? If you had Deonta Foreman, that was all you really wanted? Anybody else hurt you? I think there's going to be a situation like that. I have a hunch it's going to be Njoku, who is decent in this game because, well, rookie quarterbacks like to depend on the tight end. Pittsburgh's defense not as good as Cleveland. So if I had to put my money on one player to have a good game, it would be David Njoku. But everybody in this one's a risky play. You probably don't have all better options than every name I just mentioned. If you have some of them, you're probably in your lineup by force, but temper your expectations. Low scoring divisional game, both teams 6-3, so a very big game for the standings as well. Who gets the job done?
As DTR is no Deshaun Watson, as I think Pickett might have the slight edge here. Two good defenses, one rookie quarterback. Definitely leaning Steelers here. That's easy for me to say until the rookie shows me a reason to believe in them, a la Stroud. I'm picking Steelers.
Yeah, I definitely changed my pick when Deshaun Watson was ruled out for the rest of the season. I got to take Pittsburgh as well. I trust, which is going to sound crazy to say, I trust Kenny Pickett and the Steelers offense more.
We're both
Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
We're both believing in Matt Canada. God help us.
I mean, I don't know how much it's believing in Matt Canada and how much it's just when we saw Dorian Thompson-Robinson against the Ravens, he looked abysmal. Pittsburgh's not as good of a defense as Cleveland and not as good as they were advertised to start the season, but they are still a very good unit. Guys like J.J. Watt up front, Hayward up front, they can get into Dorian Thompson's face and make this uncomfortable. I expect this to hit the under on that 33, by the way. So I think this is a bench everybody unless you have to play them kind of game. And I think it's going to go to Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's going to get the job done. They somehow will be 7-3 after this week with an offense that has yet to outscore an opponent in the last 3 years or outgain the opponent in the last 3 years. All right, next up is a game that could be sneaky entertaining. Chicago at Detroit. Obviously, Detroit and Chicago on different trajectories for this season. As Detroit is near the top of the NFC, Chicago near the bottom. But Chicago getting Justin Fields back should unlock some potential for Cole Kmet and DJ Moore to go back to what we were seeing. Cole Kmet was very good with Bajan as well, but DJ Moore, not so much. So I think Fields is an interesting play. I'm not playing him. I actually, in a league, have Fields, who was injured for a long time, held on to him, and Jared Goff. I'm playing Jared Goff because the matchup is better. Detroit's got a better defense. But I think both are viable if you are needy of a quarterback this week. For Chicago, that backfield, we'll see about Khalil Herbert if he is activated. I think you just punt on the running back position. If he sits out, it'll still be Deonta Foreman. So for Chicago, provided Justin Fields plays, I think DJ Moore is in, and I think Cole Kmet are in. Foreman, if Khalil Herbert is out, should be played, and Justin Fields is going to be dependent on what your roster looks like. For Detroit, I think Jared Goff is a start for sure. Montgomery and Gibbs can both be started. We saw last week how good both of them can be. Both had over 18 fantasy points in the game. They're going to be just fine. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta as well going to be in your lineup.
To add into that, it was interesting because Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't pushed aside in David Montgomery's return. And more importantly, Gibbs saw work inside the 5-yard line. He had 2 attempts that went for TDs previously. All of those had gone to Montgomery, who also had 2 carries inside the 5.
And the rumor is on those first, because he got in early, that they were going to put David Montgomery in after Jahmyr Gibbs got him down there. And David Montgomery said, no, you stay in. You earn this touchdown. So maybe it's going to be a drive-by-drive type of thing between these two players. But this offense is so good. Chicago's defense is so bad. Both should be playable. This could be a shootout. Usually home games in Detroit, they're either one-sided, Detroit winning a lot this year, but in the past maybe not, or they're absolute shootouts. So who gets the win here?
It's just hard to imagine the Lions losing here. Fields isn't quite back up to his optimal self, coming off of the injury hiatus. As the only challenging opponent in the next couple of weeks for the Lions would have to be the Saints when you're looking at the schedule. I'm choosing Lions here. I'm thinking it's going to be a more entertaining game than before when Fields was out, but still got to go Lions.
Yeah, it's got to be the Lions for me as well. I do think there's a slightly higher scoring game than you're expecting, but Detroit just has too much talent. And if a side's going to take control, it's going to be that Detroit front 7 to shut down the running game, keep Justin Fields in the pocket, and really make him beat him from the pocket.
Yeah, because
that's just not his strength.
Khalil Herbert isn't back yet, right?
He's still on the IR. His window has been activated, but he's been limited. So no guarantee he does not play. No guarantee he gets activated and does play. That's why the Deonta Foreman advice is keep an eye for Khalil Herbert. If he plays, it's probably going to be too much of a timeshare to really rely on him. Next up, the Chargers go to Green Bay to play the Packers. Packers have been real bad. So the Chargers, I think, are going to play Justin Herbert pretty much week to week. Keenan Allen, limited today. Hopeful to play this weekend. Keep an eye on the injury news. If he plays, he's in your lineup. And Austin Eckler, of course, in your lineup as well. That's probably the end of the list for the Chargers. For the Packers, Aaron Jones is your best bet, but Jalen Reed and Romeo Doubs, I think, are the best 2 wide receivers for the Packers. Neither one has to be in your lineup, but you can play a very good offensive game against the Chargers. And keep in mind Luke Musgrave at tight end as well.
Yeah, a tale of 2 RBs here. You have Aaron Jones, disappointing fantasy managers, but still retaining the same workload that we saw in week 9. Right now, Jones is a mid-range RB2. And Austin Eckler, 3 consecutive top 5 finishes, 25, 21, and 22. Yeah, the dude, not your quite league winner yet, but definitely knocking on that door.
So, who you got?
You're looking at both of these teams, and I know you always have the Chargers have a chance to charger themselves. We've seen it before. That's why they're 4-5, and maybe not 6 or 7 wins or more. But Chargers have the better offense. They have kept pace most of the game with the Lions. Lions were just that much better and much more gutsier. After how the Packers fell short against the Steelers, it's a bit of a tough choice to try to pick the Packers here. So I'm picking Chargers.
Yeah, 3 of the losses by the Chargers are from Miami, Detroit, and Kansas City. No slouches to go head-to-head against. I'm taking the Chargers as well. Green Bay really hasn't looked good since the first couple of weeks of the season. Yes, they won against the Rams, but that was with Brett Rippon at quarterback, and that was pretty much a free square for a win for them. I'm taking the Chargers to get back to 500. The Chargers are very similar to the Dolphins this year. They do much better against bad teams. The Packers are a bad team this year.
Yeah, they ain't good.
Next up, Arizona at Houston. This is a very interesting game with the return of Kyler Murray. They won last week, Arizona.
Mm.
I think you can play Kyler Murray. You can definitely play James Conner. You can almost have to play Trey McBride if you have him. There's a few better options out there. Obviously, Kelsey and Andrews and guys like that, Hawkinson. But outside of that, McBride's been very good. Hollywood Brown narrowly missed a touchdown last week. I think the chemistry gets better. This is going to be a higher scoring game for sure. So I think all of those can be in your lineup. For Houston, CJ Stroud, Tank Dell. Keep an eye for Nico Collins and Noah Brown. Both were on the injury report. Sounds like Nico is definitely going to play. Noah, a little more concerning. Dalton Schultz in your lineup as well. And then keep an eye on the injury to Dameon Pierce. If he is out, good matchup for Devin Singletary, who will be getting all the work once again. Arizona, 2-8, but 1-0 with Kyler Murray. I don't think you can really look at this team as a 2-8 team because they're getting such an upgraded quarterback this part of the season. Houston 5-4. They just slayed the Bengals on the road. They were dominant offensively in multiple games. Tampa Bay against Pittsburgh at home. They're a much better home team than a road team. This game is in Houston, so who gets the win?
Yeah, Cards have had a resurgence with Murray, but I think Stroud and his many options in the air can definitely overpower Murray and the Cards. Houston became a real threat to go to the playoffs as, just Nico looks good to go for week 10. Now, if only Pierce can, do something more than just sit on the bench. Oh, boy. So, definitely picking Houston here, but you do have Marquise Brown, even though last week he never left the field in week 10 and was the forgotten man, may not be quite the same with this week. So he's getting a lot of press and a lot of.
Might have lost Joel on that one.
Come up and start him.
There he is. I thought I lost you for a second. Hollywood Brown, I mean, Atlanta's got a better secondary than you realize, so I think he's going to be better this week. He is going to be Kyler Murray's favorite target. I'm not worried about him long term. I think it's going to be a very tightly contested game, but I do think Houston gets the job done and moves to 6-4. Houston's going to be in it for the playoff picture the rest of the season. And CJ Stroud, again, I already think he's pretty much a lock for Rookie of the Year, unless Devin Achane comes back and somehow leads the league in rushing or something after missing so many games, or if Stroud takes a turn for the worse, maybe a guy like Bijan or Gibbs can get involved as well. But Houston has looked so much better than they've looked in the past few years, and I think we get the job
what about
done.
Singletary dominating that Texans backfield?
Well, without Dameon Pierce, he is going to do that. Once Pierce comes back, it'll be interesting to see how that timeshare operates because Singletary's been good the last couple of weeks, whereas Pierce has not been. But that offensive line for the Texans has been getting more and more healthy as the season's gone on. So it could be better for Pierce when he comes back.
One final interesting little tidbit here. The Texans convert 43% of their drive into points, which ranks 6th, but only 21% of their scores come via touchdowns.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see how that ratio looks for most of the teams in the NFL. But Houston has been getting the job done, especially of late. Remember, this team started, 0-2, 1-3 kind of thing, and then they've really started to pull it all together. So, kind of like Denver giving up 70 against Miami, the stats can be a little deceiving when you have a couple outliers like that. Next up, Tennessee at Jacksonville. I think this would be a lot easier to pick if we didn't just see Jacksonville look like they don't know what football is. For Tennessee, even though Derrick Henry had a bad week, you're going to play him. DeAndre Hopkins, maybe not a must start, but at least in consideration. End of list for Tennessee. For Jacksonville, you're going to play Travis Etienne. You're going to play Calvin Ridley. Remember, no Zay Jones, it sounds like. So Christian Kirk should be back, and then Evan Ingram is viable as well. Big game for the Jaguars with Houston breathing down their necks. Big game for Tennessee, who was 3-6. And if they can get a couple wins in a row, they're still in the playoff picture. Who gets this win?
Yeah, this one's I don't really think you need a whole lot of analysis here, as Jacksonville really, really needs a get-right game after just absolutely having their posteriors handed to them last week every which way and how. Titans were embarrassed by the Bucs. Big-time win in Week 10. So, yeah, Jags really looking for redemption here in a big, big way. And please, Calvin, just keep doing something. Keep on keeping on. So you gotta shrug it off. I don't want to do the other one that sounds like the song we're all tired of hearing. But boy, just Tennessee, what have you become? And hopefully Jacksonville can win and show that they are contenders and not pretenders.
Yeah, Tennessee's been much worse on the road. The jury's still out on Will Levis as far as the long-term starting quarterback. He was great week number one. He's been average to below average the last couple of weeks. The hope for Tennessee is they can get Derrick Henry going, dominate on the ground, shorten this game, and keep Jacksonville's at times explosive offense off the field. I think Jacksonville gets the win, but I do think Tennessee has a good showing in this one and keeps it fairly close. And we move on to a sneaky big game in the AFC. It's Las Vegas at Miami. Miami's a 13.5-point favorite against a 5-5 Raiders team who has looked a lot better in the last couple of weeks. You're going to play Adams. You're going to play Josh Jacobs for the Raiders. You're going to play Tyreek Hill. You're going to play Waddle. You're going to play Mostert. Achane, if you need to play him, there is a risk here. He does not get a lot of carries when he played before he got injured, but he was highly explosive. But last time he was coming back from injury against New England in week number 2, he got 1 carry. So play him at your own risk. He is very combustible. He could blow up on your roster or he could blow up in your face. Miami 6-3. They're still trying to win the AFC. They still have to win the AFC East with Buffalo and the Jets falling back last week, both losing. Big game for Miami in that respect. The Vegas Raiders are 5-5. They are feeling themselves after back-to-back wins after the firing of Josh McDaniels. So a big game for them as well. Big test for Aiden O'Connell to see if he really can be the guy. The question is, can he, and who gets the win?
Yeah, the Raiders have definitely enjoyed a renaissance comeback after the dismissal of McDaniels. And I tend to think the magic carpet ride hits a bit of a snag in a big, big way this week. I'm definitely choosing Miami as the biggest question is not if the Dolphins will win or not. It's will Achane be able to wreak havoc on the fantasy landscape this or next week?
I kind of think Miami unleashes Achane in this one. Not more than he was before, which is already only 8 to 10 carries, a couple receptions. So if they're playing against him, they can shut him down. Who knows? But this could be a very big game for Tyreek Hill, who's, of course, been very vocal about getting 2,000 yards in the season. I think this is a game where Miami wants to say, look, this is a good team that we're going to go in and pound on. The schedule for Miami gets tougher. They got Baltimore, they got Dallas, they got Buffalo down the road a little bit. They got the Jets twice coming up. So this is a softer matchup. The Jets, not the toughest matchup either. Black Friday game next week for the Dolphins and Jets, by the way.
Question about Davante Adams. So any concern? He's kind of downgraded to mid-range WR2 status as had eye-popping 48% target share against a tough Jets defense, but could only register 15 fantasy points. Is it just you're sort of writing it off because it's the Jets D?
15 fantasy points is not bad. Let's start there. The Jets defense is very good given Ramsey and Howard are back with Holland and that defensive secondary from Miami. So it's not the best matchup for Davante Adams, but Aiden O'Connell showed last week he really wants to force feed his best player in the passing game, which is good news for Davante Adams owners. Again, I think they're going to try to control the clock with Josh Jacobs and then use Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers in the passing game just to keep the ball moving. Michael Mayer could be involved as well, but you're going to start Adams and Jacobs and just hope the rest don't go off on your bench.
Yeah, as Adams has had not had a top 12 finish since week 3.
Yeah, and he might just be a wide receiver 2 the rest of the year. Aiden O'Connell might not be able to support him as a wide receiver 1, especially since this is a tough-nosed, ground-and-pound style team where Jacobs is the number 1 option. And we'll see what happens with Jacobs in the offseason. Of course, scheduled to be a free agent after the season. But we're both on Miami in this one.
I don't think we need to talk a lot about this next game, do we?
No, Giants at Washington. Giants are bad. It's only Saquon Barkley in the starting lineup. Remember, Tyrod Taylor will eventually be back. That could bring in Wan'Dale Robinson later. Shepard or Darren Waller could come back from IR later. But for right now, it's only Barkley, and that's only a volume play. For Washington, Brian Robinson is a top 5 running back on the season. He's going to be in your lineup. Terry McLaurin should be in your lineup as well, along with Logan Thomas. Also, Sam Howell has been a very good quarterback. So if you are needy for a streaming option and he's on your waivers, great pickup. A bad defense in the Giants. We saw him get lit up by Dallas last week. Washington at home, they're still hanging on to some hope for the playoffs at 4-6. Giants 2-8. Really got to be looking ahead to the next season between all the injuries and the terrible.
No Coach of the Year award this year. Nope.
Definitely not. So probably know the answer, but who gets the win?
Yeah, I doubt you're going contrarian on this one, as I'm picking the Commanders because the Giants are 100%, 10% pure garbage this year.
Yeah, so far the only one we disagree on is the one tonight, Cincinnati and Baltimore. I'm on Washington as well. The Giants just with Tommy, don't call me Danny DeVito. I just don't trust this offense. Saquon Barkley is going to get force-fed. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt, but the way the Giants are going, who knows? I think Washington is just too much on both sides of the ball to let this one slip away.
This is a game that I'm probably not going to want to watch based on last year.
Tampa Bay and San Francisco. Yeah, San Francisco looked a lot better than they had before the bye, dominating the Jacksonville Jaguars. For San Francisco, fire.
Tampa Bay had been watching that and going, bleep, here we go again.
Yeah, you can play Purdy, you can play McCaffrey, you can play Kittle, you can play Samuel, you can play Ayuk, and you probably should play all 5 of those options if you have any one of them. For Tampa Bay, you're still going to play Evans. You're still going to play Godwin. San Francisco, if you're going to beat them.
Evans does have a bit of a quad concern.
He always has a quad or a hamstring. He shows up, plays on game day, and dominates. I'm not worried about that until I see he's out. You're going to play both the receivers. You beat San Francisco through the air. Cade Otton could be a decent option at tight end in a DFS type of lineup. Rachaad White, temper your expectations. San Francisco has a great front 7, a great run defense, and Baker Mayfield might be in for a very rough day between Bosa and Chase Young going after him. Joel, I know it's your Bucks. I know what you're rooting for, but do you think they get it done?
Not a lot of hope that day for Tampa Bay when the 49ers spend most of the fourth quarter just trying to get CMC at TD. That pretty much tells you all you need to know. Picking the 49ers to hopefully not embarrass the Bucks too much. But if last year, as I said, was any indication, this ain't going to be a pretty afternoon. It's one that, are we there yet? Is it over yet? I'm picking San Francisco, and just like Bill Belichick, I'm on to the next week.
Yeah, I'm taking Tampa Bay to get pounded. San Francisco, I think, is going to roll all over this team. I don't think it'll be quite as bad as Jacksonville. Just a hunch that they're going to figure some stuff out that they saw last week with Chase Young. Remember, first game with Chase Young, it does change that defense a little bit. Now,
can you imagine if we're both wrong in Tampa Bay somehow? I can't see that happening.
Hey,
I can't.
I know as a Bucks fan and me living in the Tampa Bay area, that would be great, especially for someone who wants to see like Detroit win the NFC regular season.
10% chance of happening. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a very small chance, but I'm going to take San Francisco. This team is different when they have all their weapons. They didn't have Deebo Samuel for 2 of those losses, and they lost him in the third.
The battle station is now fully operational.
Yeah, it's San Francisco is a different team when they're fully healthy. Injuries are really the biggest thing that can stop this team. Maybe Philadelphia, maybe Detroit, maybe a team like Kansas City, Baltimore, Miami, and the AFC down the line if we get to that point. But for the most part, San Francisco is a juggernaut that is looking like they're just going to continue to roll.
Now we go to the game that Ryan will be seeing live.
Next up, New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills. Game time temperature expected to be just above freezing, and for an overweight Florida boy, I actually kind of like that. No snow though, so okay, that's fine.
Dressing about 50 million layers.
There's the check-in for my flight reminder. As we're talking about the game, I have to check in for my flight to go to. So for the Jets, the Bills defense hasn't been great. Zach Wilson has already beaten this team minus the 4 snaps Aaron Rodgers had. So I think you have to play Breece Hall. You have to play Garrett Wilson. That's probably the end of the list for the Jets. For Buffalo, you got to think Stephon Diggs is going to be much more involved this week after what happened last week. But Patrick Surtain is a very good corner, and so is Sauce Gardner. That's the last one he played, and the next one he plays. So it's going to be a tough matchup for Stephon Diggs again. I'm actually playing CJ Stroud over Josh Allen in a dynasty league because the matchup is that bad. Allen went for just over 7 points in the week 1 matchup between these two. He's a turnover machine. There's a big negative number that could be hung in that game. You also can play James Cook. If you're going to beat the Jets, you're going to most likely do it on the ground. And, of course, Gabe Davis is a troll. So do the opposite of what you think is the right thing to do is basically how you perform with him. I'll be there. I know who I'm rooting for. I know who I'm picking. But, Joel, who do you got?
Yeah, with this one, the Jets' offense is horrid. Bills' offense was so bad that their OC
How bad are they?
Their OC was just freshly canned this week. That's how bad they were. So, just lots of questions for Buffalo. How they respond to that Denver shocker from Monday Night Football. As good as the Jets D happens to be, Buffalo's O, while sometimes questionable, is still better. Regressing to be sure, but still better. Have to pick Buffalo here. Fingers crossed, both of them, and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I got to take Buffalo as well, but I definitely am not as confident in this team as I would have expected.
They would be like a 14 or a 15 confidence pick.
Yeah, and honestly, they're one of the lowest because I do have a confidence pool at work. Unfortunately, San Francisco is my number one, the 14-point pick this week. Yeah, Dallas is up there as well, but San Francisco's one because one of the tiebreakers is the points you wager on the Tampa game. So if they're going to be 13th, I might as well make them 14 points. That's all I'm saying. But I'm taking Buffalo. I'm just a lot less confident. This is probably going to be a much lower scoring game. It was 16-12 the first time that, or was it 19-12 the first time? It was a really low scoring game that ended on a walk-off punt return for the Jets. We'll see. Buffalo has to get it going because if Miami wins, Buffalo loses, the Jets would be 500. Buffalo would be behind them, and Miami could start to pull away, especially with that game against the Jets the next week on Black Friday. Buffalo can't afford to lose any ground here. They got to get it done against a team there. Again, they are better than the Jets, but they just have to show it. I'm going to take Buffalo. They're at home. That's got to count for something. That's, they only lost the one game against Denver. Hopefully they can get it done. Count to 11, not 12 this time. That's all.
Yeah.
Next up, Seattle at the Los Angeles Rams. Seattle lost to the Rams week 1, 30-13. Matt Stafford expected to be back for this game, but one more week before we see Kyron Williams back. But it's good news for Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, who should both be in your lineup. Darrell Henderson could be a spot start at running back if needed for Seattle. Metcalf, Lockett, Walker, all in your lineup, and Jackson Smith and Jigba could be on your radar as he's getting more and more involved as the weeks go on. Seattle tied with San Francisco for the top of the division going into this week. We both picked San Francisco to win. Does Seattle keep pace?
Yeah, just one thing that Seattle definitely showed me last week, that they showed me that they are legit. And I'm picking the Seahawks. It's not an analysis need other than Rams backers. And if you have any Ram fantasy assets, you better pray that Stafford is ready to roll, or else it's going to be a fugly day, about as fugly as the weather was in the Tampa Bay area. Let me tell you. Yeah, that ugly. I'm picking the Seahawks.
3 straight days of rain with some thunderstorms passing through. Not ideal. It won't be as bad as Brett Rippon if it's Carson Wentz. I guarantee you that much. But it's not going to be Matthew Stafford by any stretch of the imagination.
When Carson Wentz is an upgrade, that's when you know somebody is bad.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford, I believe, is set to play, but I'm taking Seattle as well. I think they're going to try and avenge that week 1 loss. They came in a little underprepared week 1. They're not going to do that again.
That'd be like if Carson Wentz is the answer, what's the question?
Yeah. Next up, an interesting game. I think if we looked at this game 2 weeks ago after Kirk Cousins got hurt, before Denver really got on their roll, we wouldn't be as excited about this game as we are. But Minnesota, 6-4,
Oh,
5 straight
yeah.
wins, hottest team in football. Joshua Dobbs becoming a folk hero. Denver, 3 straight wins. They've beaten Kansas City and Buffalo the last 2 games. Russell Wilson looks like the old Russell Wilson. Cortland Sutton's
Russ
getting it going.
is cooking.
Yeah, I mean, the only person on this offense that really isn't going how we were hoping is Jerry Jeudy at this point. So for the Broncos, I think Minnesota's defense is not great. You can play Russell Wilson. You can play Cortland Sutton. You can play Javonte Williams. You probably should play all 3 of them, depending on who else your options are. For Minnesota, Joshua Dobbs is a top 10 quarterback on the season. Justin Jefferson, we'll see if he comes back. If he plays, that hurts Jordan Addison.
You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
Obviously, if Justin Jefferson is active, you are going to play him.
Herm Edwards moment.
Yes. If Justin Jefferson is active, he is in your lineup. TJ Hawkinson, he's in your lineup as well. He's a tight end 1 on the season. And yeah. Alexander Madison, keep an eye on the concussion. If he plays, not the best run defense, but not the worst. Remember, they got gashed against Miami, so the stats are going to make them look worse than they really are. In the last few weeks, the Denver defense has been very, very
finally
stingy.
Last week, Ty Chandler was actually fantasy relevant.
Yeah, so don't expect Minnesota just to walk all over Denver because the stats say Denver was a bad defense. Remember, 9 points to Kansas City, 19 points to Kansas City, 22 to Buffalo. I mean, they've had some much better games of late, so keep that in mind. Joel, important game for both teams. Minnesota, aspirations to win the NFC North, possibly a long shot because Detroit, not the hardest schedule. Denver, 4-5, has crawled at least back into the wild card picture. Maybe not the AFC West rates because Kansas City likely going to run away with it later in the season. But big game for both teams, a game that we did not expect to be this interesting and dynamic and valuable to each team a couple weeks ago. Who gets the win?
Yeah, Denver's kind of going like to crawl back into relevance as far as playoffs go. As you said, better game than most people would have thought. If you go in the Wayback Machine just 1 month ago, Vikings have found their new leader in Josh Jacobs, even with Captain Kirk being knocked out for the year. Denver has definitely shocked the Chiefs, and now the Bills showing that they are for real. As all of a sudden it was let's hide. Now it's okay, let's ride. As Sutton's catch was a thing of pure football elegance, and everything on this game depends upon one player. Will Justin Jefferson return to the fold? And just because of that, I was thinking, leaning Denver, but I know as beautiful catch as Sutton had, you had the Justin Jefferson catch in Buffalo. And what is it with the teams that do that to Buffalo? It seems to be a thing, but I may be a little bit crazy, but I'm picking the Vikings.
This was the toughest game for me to pick, but I did land on Denver. I'm not sure if Justin Jefferson plays. If he does play, if he's going to get a full allotment of snaps, I think they might hold him out just one more week. He's limited. They do not want to rush him back, especially when they're already winning. They don't need to rush him back. And I think that, like you said, is a difference point. So even if he's back, I think Denver still has the defense between Patrick Surtain in the secondary and the defense in front that's starting to come alive to limit this Minnesota offense. It's going to be one of the better defenses Joshua Dobbs has faced in the last few weeks. And I think Denver gets another win and moves to 5-5. And Minnesota, even though it's a loss, still going to be well in playoff consideration at this time. And we move to a highlight game of the season. The Super Bowl rematch between Philadelphia and Kansas City. This one will be taking place at Arrowhead in Kansas City. Kansas City has had a very good defense this year, but you're still going to play A.J. Brown. You're still going to play Jalen Hurts for sure. No Dallas Goedert with the broken arm. He's still listed as doubtful. He's not going to play. Devonta Smith has been much better without Dallas Goedert in the past. Not necessarily a force him in your lineup over better options, guys, but if you are torn in a flex consideration, keep that part in mind. And DeAndre Swift has been pretty good all season long. tough defensive matchup. So again, maybe not a shove him in your lineup at all cost play, but in consideration. For Kansas City, Isaiah Pacheco is the number one running back, but Philadelphia has the toughest run defense. If there's a week to not play Pacheco, this one's going to be it. But Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes, set to explode, and Rashee Rice has been much better of late for the Kansas City Chiefs. If there's a wide receiver you want to put your money on, that's the one I would go with. But Sky Moore and MVS could get some games, some points going for them as well. Philadelphia's back-end defense, not as good as their front end. So, Super Bowl rematch, Philadelphia, revenge on the mind. Kansas City trying to prove a point that they're not only better than the Eagles, but this would tie them for the best record in football if they can get the win. Who gets it done?
3 solid, good primetime games. What happened? How did this schedule somehow fall between the cracks in the inner sanctum known as the National Football League office? If Philly were home, I might be tempted to pick them here, but KC should be wired and fired up, hoping that their wideouts can actually, catch the ball, hoping for a good close game. Would be nice to see the Eagles get one here, but it's hard to roll against the champs at home. I'm picking the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm picking the home team as well. I've said a lot, even though Philadelphia is 8-1, they never have really looked as good as what the record says offensively. They've been good enough to get wins. They've had some help from the refs a couple times. I mean, they could have lost to Dallas very easily last game out. Miami, there's a bunch of controversial calls. I just think Philadelphia is going to be outcoached. And I think this defense for the Kansas City Chiefs is the big difference. And I think Kansas City gets it done as well. So that's week 11. Only 2 different picks, and it's tonight, Thursday night, and Sunday night football. I've got Cincinnati. Joel's got Baltimore. I've got Denver. Joel's got Minnesota on Sunday night football. Time for final thoughts. Joel.
Hold on. It's like I had it and I lost it brilliantly.
Okay, then.
So if you go with your final thought, then I'll find my final thought, and then we can do the final thoughts.
My final thought is just keep in mind your trade deadlines in fantasy are coming up. Look at playoff schedules. They, we're only 4 or 5 weeks away from the start of the playoffs, and there are guys with better matchups. Don't trade studs to get good matchups. But, there are guys like, I don't know, Hollywood Brown that have a pretty good playoff matchup that maybe a guy like Amari Cooper with the injury you want to get rid of.
We found it.
All right. So, yeah, trade deadlines, be active, be interested. And Joel, final thought.
Final thought is notable wide receivers without a 20 fantasy point game. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Chris Godwin. Christian Watson.
Yeah, he's been bad.
DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I know that one too well. He's got a very good playoff schedule, though, so he might, if you can make the playoffs with him, he might be a league winner type.
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, Zach Wilson does that.
Jerry Judy.
I don't know if we can call him noteworthy, but you're not wrong.
Marquise Brown. I feel that one personally.
That one I fully believe will come around now that Kyler Murray's back.
Terry McLaurin.
That one's a surprise.
And Zay Flowers.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, the rookie. I think he's got brighter days ahead, but this passing game is just not what Baltimore is built on.
And the 3 wide receivers with the most 20 fantasy point games.
Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb.
Close. Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua.
Oh, Puka! Of course it's Puka. I forgot how good Puka was.
CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb's been the best player in fantasy the last month or so, and I forgot how good Puka was to start the season. Dang. All right, well,
Puka
New
Puka.
Tyreek and also Keenan. I'm surprised Keenan Allen's not in there as well.
Yeah,
'Cause
he's
he's been fantastic.
He's actually right after Justin Jefferson and after Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, he's had a lot of 18, 19-point games in there as well. So he's the wide receiver 2 on the season last I saw, only behind Tyreek
And
Hill.
then after Adam Thielen, you have the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Amon-Ra. All right, so yeah, Buffalo bound tomorrow. Going to be wearing Dolphins gear up, and then it'll be a little more neutral to Buffalo gear from there.
Are you going to have that probably might not be a good idea. Somebody might actually attack you if you have the Dolphin theme song and you blare it.
No, I'm trying not to do anything to call attention to myself. None of the people going are Buffalo fans. This is like a stadium. We want to go to one stadium a year or a couple games a year and hit every stadium. This year, it just happens to be Buffalo. None of us are Buffalo fans. In fact, I'm going to a Packers, a Saints, and a Patriots fan, and I'm a Dolphins fan. So we're all on the side of the Bills, mostly because Aaron Rodgers is not playing, or else we'd have been 3-1 with the Packers fan going for Rodgers and the Jets. But that's not the scenario we're in. So we're all on for Buffalo. Flight has been checked in early in the B group, so that's not too bad. I'll get a seat I want. And yeah, quick weekend trip back in town on Monday. We're going to be doing a podcast on Tuesday.
Tuesday will be
next week.
Tuesday will be recaps.
It'll be recaps, and it'll be the picks for Thursday and Dolphins Jets on Friday, because the podcast will either be Friday or Saturday after, probably Friday, but it'll likely be, later in the day.
Thursday's game, Friday game. We're not to Saturday games yet, are we?
No. 3 games on Thursday, 1 on Friday, day off from games on Saturday, and then back to a limited but full slate. Nobody has a bye week, so it's to be 11 games on Saturday or Sunday, 1 on Monday, as the NFL expands its offerings to dominate the entirety of the week next week. And with that, that's our time. We got through it. Week 11 already.
I'm bracing for the pummeling.
I mean, keep your head up if you're in fantasy. Again, those 4 and 6 teams, all 3 of them, they're in playoff contention. None of them in playoff position, but every other team, even that 5 and 5 up there, is a playoff team right now. Mega Bowl's pretty close.
Yeah, I actually had an interesting memory come up where I had somebody wanting to, this was from 2011, wanted to borrow LaShawn McCoy, and then they would return him 2 weeks later. The only problem why I rejected that was the 2 weeks later was after the trade deadline. So how are somebody supposed to return somebody to you after the trade deadline is gone? So definitely a little bit sus.
Yeah, some people just like to try and do all the dirty tricks. Anyways, I'm Flying Ryan Gilchrist along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
And the coughing was better, but not gone. So hopefully next week will be 100%, even though the last couple times I've traveled, sponsor come back with me.
This podcast sponsored by Hydration and Lozenges.
Yep, that's it. And with that, lovely.